Chapter 10, Big Organic. I'm certainly not the only one who has learned the truth about the industrial food chain. In recent years, more and more Americans have discovered the same sad facts. A lot of them are trying to get away from the kingdom of corn and processed food by buying organic food. And in my part of the world, there is no greater temple to all things organic, natural, and unprocessed than my local Whole Foods supermarket. I confess that I really enjoy shopping at Whole Foods. It has some of the same feelings as browsing a good bookstore. Maybe that's because at Whole Foods I spend a lot of my time reading, not books, but labels. Every food item in the store seems to have a little story attached to it. Take the range-fed sirloin steak in the meat case. There's a flyer on the counter that says once upon a time the steak was a part of a steer that spent its days living in beautiful places. Among the places the steer got to visit were high mountainous meadows, thick aspen groves, and miles of sagebush-filled flats. Now, a steak like that has got to taste better than one without a story. You can bet it will cost more too. These food stories are showing up everywhere. On a recent shopping trip, I filled my shopping cart with eggs from cage-free vegetarian hens, milk from cows that live free from unnecessary fear and distress, wild salmon caught by Native Americans in Yakuta, Alaska, population 833, heirloom tomatoes from Capay Valley Farm, $4.99 a pound, one of the early pioneers of the organic movement. The organic chicken I picked even had a name, Rosie. Rosie was a free-range chicken from Petaluma Poultry. Almost all of the labels featuring the word organic. 40 years ago, there was no such category as organic food. Today, it is a $20 billion business, the fastest growing part of the food industry. The word organic has become a kind of shorthand food that is healthier or more natural or chemical free. Yet, as I had learned, organic has different meanings. Now I had more questions than answers. For example, there be such a thing as an organic TV dinner? What about an organic Twinkie? Exactly how different is organic food from industrial food? I was about to find out. Once upon a time, all food was organic. It was grown without the help of fossil fuels, pesticides, or chemical fertilizers. As we have seen, that all began to change about 50 years ago with the growth of the industrial food chain. One of the first to notice this change was a man named J.I. Rodale. In 1940, he started a magazine called Organic Gardening and Farming. In his magazine, Rodale wrote about the health benefits of growing food without synthetic chemicals organically. But the idea of organic food did not really catch on until 1969. That year marked the height of the counterculture of the 1960s. Civil rights and anti-war protests rocked the country. Young people were rebelling against a society they thought was violent, corrupt, and immoral. Some dropped out to join communes, groups of people living and working on farms. One part of this counterculture was the environmental movement. It was spurred in part by a 1962 book called Silent Spring by a woman named Rachel Carson. In it, she warned of the dangers of pesticides like DDT. Events in the news in 1969 also made people aware of the dangers of pollution. A giant oil spill off Santa Barbara blackened California's coastline. A river in Cleveland was so full of filth that it caught on fire. Suddenly, people started using the word ecology and talking about cleaning up the planet. The first Earth Day was held in April 1970, and the idea of organic food began to catch on. Eating whole wheat bread and whole grains like brown rice became a symbol of the new movement. Processed food like white bread was called plastic food. The first organic food co-ops were founded. Neighbors would get together once a week and order organic vegetables from farmers. They had to agree on what to order, and often they bought whatever the local farms had to offer. To the young people who founded those first co-ops, the word organic meant more than a method of farming. It meant living in harmony with nature instead of trying to control it. It meant being free from the control of big corporations. Growing organic food was a way to live their principles and not just talk about them. Most of those food co-ops are gone now, and many of them have been driven out by businesses by national organic supermarket chains like Whole Foods. Today, the average supermarket, there's a selection of organic fruits and vegetables flown in from all over the world. You can buy your organics at any time of year, no matter the season, and you don't have to get a dozen other people to agree on what to buy. But if you look at it a little closer, you'll see that something has been left behind. The organic food in stores like Whole Foods is organic because it is grown without chemical fertilizers or pesticides, yet much of it is also industrial. Most organic vegetables in the US are grown in large monoculture farms, farms growing only one crop, far from the people who eat it. Most of it is processed and sold by the same industrial food chain as the corn from George Naylor's farm, because this food chain has elements of both. I call it industrial organic. For example, some organic milk comes from cows on a small farm, but most organic milk comes from factory farms. The cows on these farms spend their time in a fenced lot eating organic grain, except for the 3 times a day they are hooked up to milking machines. Likewise, organic beef is often raised in organic feedlots. The cows are fed corn just like the cows at Pokey, but their feed is organic. The government rules about organic food allow companies to make organic high fructose corn syrup, words I never expected to see combined. The organic HFCS could come in useful when making organic processed foods like organic soda or organic TV dinners. I found one such TV dinner that included 31 ingredients, from guar and xanthan gum to natural grill flavor. Several of the ingredients were synthetic additives and permitted under federal organic rules. The TV dinner was made by a company called Cascadian Farm. The story of Cascadian tells you a lot about the growth of the organic food movement and how it has changed. Cascadian settled as a kind of hippie commune in 1972, founded by a fellow named Gene Kahn and his friends. Like other young people at the time, Kahn had the idea of getting back to the land and changing the American food system. Today, Cascadian is owned by General Mills, and Kahn is a General Mills vice president.